So next we have Michelle Mullenax. Michelle's a product and UX lead in the innovation team at American Red Cross. Michelle is the product, she leads the conversational artificial intelligence which leverages the power of natural language understanding and processing in the form of chatbots, Alexa skills, and actions on Google, Siri, and interactive voice response. Michelle believes in the transformative power of artificial intelligence and its ability to further the mission of the American Red Cross. Prior to her role in the innovation team, Michelle led multiple teams at the PwC Google Alliance, which developed products that specialized in artificial intelligence, machine learning for large enterprises. Michelle earned her MBA with a specialization in entrepreneurship and innovation from the NYU Stern School of Business and BA from the University of Colorado in Denver. She's going to talk to us about designing voice-first experiences for social good, how the American Red Cross leverages the power of voice to deliver its mission. With a loud round of applause, can we welcome on stage Michelle.
So happy to be here. I've actually been to Bangalore a few times now, and I love coming back to Bangalore. It's such a beautiful city. People are so warm and so friendly, and everyone here is very smart, so it makes sense that this is the location of the very first Alexa Community Conference. So, like our host said, my name is Michelle Mullenax. I'm the product and UX lead for the innovation team at the American Red Cross. And today I'm going to be talking to you about, what is the Red Cross? What is the work that we do? Why do we care about Alexa? Why do we care about conversational AI? And then we're going to put on our design hats and talk about some of the design considerations that we follow in building our skills. So just to get a sense of the room, how many of you are developers? Okay, hands down. How many of you are designers? Yes, raise it high. For the next 20 minutes, all of us are conversation designers. So here are my contact details. I think I am the only person in the whole industry who is not on Twitter, so you cannot find me there. But you can find me here. Do take down my contact information. Come say hello after the presentation. We'll have all day to nerd out about Alexa. So what is my role at the Red Cross? I'm part of the innovation team at the American Red Cross. And the American Red Cross is a very big organization, about 21,000 people, based solely in the United States. And the purpose of the innovation team is to scan the organization, identify problems, and then solutions to those problems that apply either emerging technology or some sort of innovative application of existing technologies to further our mission. And the practice that I run is conversational AI specifically. So for us, what does that mean? It means chatbots, all flavors of chatbots, web-based chatbots, of course. WhatsApp chatbots are something that we're thinking about. Facebook is definitely on our roadmap. And it means voice. So Alexa, the star of voice. But it also means actions on Google. We want to get the wide range of devices that are gaining proliferation in the United States. And the Indian Red Cross Society are both part of the same organization that we call the movement. It's the International Red Cross and Red Crescent Society, Red Crescent Movement. So all around the world, each nation has either their own Red Cross or their own Red Crescent Society, all very similar humanitarian organizations. So the American Red Cross focuses on the United States. The Indian Red Cross Society focuses on India. So we're very similar in the type of work that we do. We're both humanitarian organizations. We both focus on response to emergencies. But the work that we do is a little bit different because the United States and India obviously have very, very different needs. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what it is that the American Red Cross does and why is it that we're thinking about voice-activated solution, voice-activated experiences. So disaster relief. This is probably what we're the most well known for. We respond to disasters, big and small. So the big disasters are the ones that you typically see in the news. 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, the earthquakes in Haiti, for example, that was an international disaster. What we're a little less known for, but is still very important to the work that we do, are home fires. So we're not the firemen, right? We don't put out the fires, but a lot of folks don't know that we respond to over 60,000 house fires in the United States every single year. So if, God forbid, there's an apartment fire or a home fire, the fire department will come, put out the fire, but then either right before them often or right after the fire department is the American Red Cross. And we help you clean up your home. We help with housing assistance, mental health counseling, because it's a very traumatic event to have your home burned down. And it's something that's very important to the disaster relief work that we do. Next is life-saving blood. By raise of hands, who has donated blood at any point in their life? That's amazing. So, what's interesting is more folks raised their hand for donating blood than knew about the Indian Red Cross Society. I actually had the pleasure of visiting our friends in Bombay at the Red Cross and saw their blood facility, not dissimilar to the work that we do in the United States. So in the US, the American Red Cross is responsible for 40% of the nation's life-saving blood supply. So we host drives, we'll collect the blood from volunteer blood donors. We process it, make sure that it's safe, process it into different types of blood products. Eventually, those blood products find their way into hospitals to help save lives. So it's a very important part of our mission work. Next is training and certification. So we want to make sure to respond to disasters, but we also want to make sure that our constituents, the public, our consumers are prepared for disasters big and small as well. So disaster preparedness, home fire safety, making sure that you know what to do in the case of a home fire, how to get out of the house. Also CPR certification, first aid certification, even things like babysitter training to make sure, young babysitters are safe in the home with young children, lifeguard training, etc. Military families. So the very first Red Cross was founded in Switzerland. That's where the movement is headquartered, in Geneva. We were right behind them and founded right around the time of the Civil War, so the 19th century. So we have this very rich history of working with veterans, working with military families that we've continued today. And then finally, international services. So while our focus is the United States, we still do plenty of response work abroad. So I had mentioned the earthquakes in Haiti for an example. We help with refugee migration, support for those in transition, and work abroad for our Red Cross partners that need help as well. So as you can see, we have a very wide and diverse scope to our work, which means that we have tons of use cases for emerging UX, tons of use cases for voice. And we're going to talk about some of the use cases that we've already lifted off in production and why are we so excited about this technology, right? Whenever I talk with folks, whether those who know about the Red Cross or those like everyone in this room who are excited about Alexa, they always stop and ask, why is the Red Cross doing Alexa? Why does the Red Cross care about conversational AI? And it's actually a very important part of our strategy for the innovation team at the Red Cross. So what is the power of Alexa that I'm most excited about? It's this wonderful, empathetic way to get closer to your consumer. And when you think about our work, right, we respond to disasters big and small. Our mission is to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of our volunteers and the generosity of our donors. And the key part to think about there is in the face of emergencies. If there's a disaster, or let's say there's an urgent need to collect blood, these are very timely interactions. And even though the proliferation of Alexa is absolutely on the rise, our first speaker, Jeff, this morning mentioned there's 100 million Alexa users, right? That's almost a third of the population of the United States. So it's on this upward trajectory, but it's not quite as ubiquitous as mobile apps or let's say going to the web to try and to find answers to your questions or to make some sort of transaction. And we're trying to look ahead, right? So as the proliferation is maturing, we want to already be mature in this space because by time Alexa adoption is at its most mature, if we haven't started yet, it's too late, right? Hey, Alexa, where's the American Red Cross? I don't know, they're still catching up trying to figure it out. So we're doing that work now, laying this foundation so we are where the consumers are when they're most in need and when we're most in need of them so we can make those connections most effectively. So that's the core of our motivation of investing our time and energy into conversational AI, especially Alexa. But beyond that, especially as a design nerd, what I'm really excited about is this amazing empathetic UX, right? There's this emotional component to Alexa by using your voice as human quality that we haven't seen in any other channels. So it's been exciting for us, independent of that mission delivery, to be able to tell the work of the Red Cross through Alexa's voice. And today we have 3 Alexa skills that are live in production. You can go to the store right now and enable them. The first on the left is blood donation. So you can ask Alexa to schedule a new appointment, manage your appointments, send a reminder. Even though I work at the Red Cross, I cannot keep track of my appointments, so I'm constantly asking Alexa, when is my next appointment? And she's always there to remind me. The next is first aid. So this is an educational use case. How are we able to use conversations with Alexa to help people brush up on their first aid skills and be prepared in the face of an emergency? And then finally, we have hurricane alerts, which is a disaster relief use case. So if you're in a hurricane-prone area, many of the large disasters that we respond to in the United States are big hurricanes. Hurricane Katrina, probably the most famous in the last decade, Hurricane Harvey, Maria, etc. If you're in one of those disaster-prone areas for a hurricane, you can enable the skill ahead of time, and then if, God forbid, a hurricane is in your path, it'll wake you up any time of day and give you life-saving tips to make sure that you are safe in the case of that disaster. So that's the foundation of why we are excited about Alexa. So I want to put on our design hats and talk about some of the design considerations that we use when we're building skills. We're going to use 2 of them as use cases. We're going to deep dive into what these skills are and talk about some of the conversation design. So blood donation. This is such a core part of our business, so I'm very excited about this use case. Again, the use case is that you can schedule new appointments, manage them, reschedule them, cancel them if you need to. You can also set reminders. And what's important to understand about this skill is that it's a transaction-focused skill, right? What is the transaction here? The transaction is that you are scheduling this appointment. And this is not dissimilar to e-commerce, right? What is the transaction on Amazon.com? It's buy now. The transaction for the American Red Cross blood donation skill is schedule now. And it's funnel focused toward that ultimate goal of scheduling your appointment. So what's the funnel on any e-commerce website like Amazon.com? You are shopping, you find your selection, you put it in the cart, you review, and then eventually buy now. The funnel for American Red Cross blood donation, do you want to schedule a new appointment? Where do you live? What's your zip code? Perhaps the 3 words in the future, exactly. And then it will pull up the blood drives, give you an option of the most convenient to you. You can schedule a day and a time, then schedule. So this is what we keep in mind when we are designing the conversation. We have a note here, includes dynamic intents. So I want to clarify that. So a couple of our Alexa developers are like, that's not how you refer to it. So forgive me there. So what we mean by dynamic intents is that an intent is an intent, but the response that comes back is specific to you. So we leverage multiple APIs to make this skill work. So we're able to see, okay, these are your appointment details. We go into our downstream systems on the Red Cross side to identify, okay, these are the blood donation locations, these are the blood drives. So this answer is changing based on your interaction. So the design consideration here, keep your funnel in mind. There's an end goal here, so this conversation should always be moving forward. And this is something that we were working with in the beginning inception of this skill. We would set it up quite simply. Welcome, how can I help you today? And we would get all sorts of questions. They would ask questions about eligibility. I've recently traveled to India. I've recently traveled to Italy. Can I donate? Does it hurt, right? Does blood donation hurt? And it would diverge the conversation away from that funnel. So we had to be more prescriptive about it. Welcome. Together we can save lives. Would you like to schedule a new appointment? Or can I help you with something else? And we found that with that simple directive to the user in the very beginning of the skill, it establishes what the skill can do. We had a greater success rate of funneling them toward that end goal, which reduced our drop-off rate. So if you have a transaction-based skill, clearly understand what is my funnel, what are the steps that I need to take to move one person to the next, and what language can I use to nudge them forward. The next use case is first aid. So a big part of our mission is making sure that people are prepared in the case of emergencies, right? To prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. And that includes being brushed up on first aid. So in case that there's a cut or a burn or a seizure, etc. This skill will walk you through those steps, provide the tutoring necessary so you are prepared in those emergencies, and then quiz you. Right? This is a very popular skill for those who have received first aid certification from the American Red Cross but a year ago, right? So they can't quite remember how is it that you're supposed to turn somebody on their side during a seizure, how do you actually treat a burn, etc. So they can ask Alexa. So things to keep in mind, it's static, right? An intent is an intent, but the responses are going to stay the same no matter what. This skill doesn't happen to leverage any sort of API, right? So the user is simply navigating through this Q&A. It's educational. That is your goal, right? So it's an engagement goal that you're driving toward. And it's a less focused path because we have something like a dozen different topics of first aid. It's a very diverse topic set to be putting into a skill. So what are the design considerations that we follow? Incorporate incentives into skills when they lack transactions. A transaction is a goal. It has incentives. My incentive to schedule a blood donation is that I'm able to go and donate my blood. If I am purchasing a product online, my incentive is to receive that product. So what is the incentive when I'm just tutoring myself on first aid, brushing up on my skills? We provide some gamification as part of this skill, right? So I am looking through multiple topics, learning about treating burns, treating cuts, responding to seizures, etc. Then what? Did you find this skill helpful? Yes. Pause. End of conversation. How do you keep it going? How do you provide some sort of reward to those who have been interacting with your skill? Instead, you've reviewed 4 topics today. Would you like to take a quiz to test your skills? Yes. And then they continue to engage in that skill. So we've done a test with this in the beginning. We simply wanted to get some sort of feedback of whether the skill was helpful. Everyone said yes, but they were dropping off pretty quickly, right? We incorporated the quizzes and we saw that engagement skyrocket. So moving forward, if you have a less focused path, you lack transactions or a funnel, see what sort of incentive could be incorporated in there, perhaps through gamification. Now, we walk through 2 specific use cases and those design principles for those use cases, but we're constantly looking at different voice experiences, some that are being produced for release in 2020, refinement of our current skills, and there's a toolkit that we leverage no matter what the voice experience is, whether that's for Alexa or Google or perhaps IVR. And I want to walk through these principles now so you leave here today with at least a couple of tools for your toolkit. So when you're building your skills, it has a more effective, pleasing conversation design, more pleasing UX. The first is keep it simple. When I've seen young skill developers build their first skill, they try to put everything under the sun into it. And it can be very complicated because they're trying to show off, look how I can leverage this model, look how fancy my skill is. But it doesn't quite have the effectiveness, right, that it needs. So never say in many, many words what you can only say in just a few words. This is true in life. Right? This is true in business writing, this is true in Alexa, this is true in UX in general. We never want to be too verbose. Next is often choose, when it's appropriate, words that have the least amount of syllables. So that's quite specific, right? But what's the difference between I would like to congratulate you today and congrats, right? They have the same effect. One is more relaxed, more colloquial, and perhaps one is more easily understood, the second one. A simple congrats will often do the trick. Again, don't be fancy. Try to imagine if you're building an Alexa skill, built for somebody who is using Alexa for the very first time. If I'm building an Alexa for this gentleman over here, he knows Alexa. I can maybe get a little fancy, incorporate some terms because I know that they understand this intuitive interaction. But if you're designing for the public, try to be as simple and straightforward as possible. The next one I harp on all the time, I'm a broken record about. Honor the channel that you are designing for. So Alexa itself is what, maybe 4 or 5 years old, so it's still a pretty young technology. Chatbots, on the other hand, a core part of conversational AI, much older. So a lot of people here have experience with chatbots. By raise of hand, who's either developed a chatbot, explored it, played around with it quite a bit? Okay, a decent amount, about a third of the audience. I've seen this time and time again, where developers and designers, product managers, will take their chatbot, take that interaction model, and then shove it into an Alexa experience. And then they're curious why it doesn't work. So we do not type the same way that we speak. So when you're doing your conversation design for Alexa, keep in mind, what's the natural interaction? It's typically fewer words, it's typically more casual, more straightforward, more straight to the point. So the blood donation skill that we have live in production right now is an Alexa skill that has a primary purpose of scheduling your blood donation. We actually have that same use case on redcrossblood.org. You can actually check it out today. Her name is Clara, named after our founder of the American Red Cross, Clara Barton. And that chatbot has the same use case. The purpose is to schedule your blood donation appointment, but it has this incredibly complex interaction model for eligibility questions. The questions that we were seeing in Alexa that weren't quite working, right? Can I donate blood if I've traveled to India? Can I donate blood if I'm taking antibiotics? I'm really scared of blood donation. Is it going to hurt? How long is it going to take? That interaction model works really well on a chatbot because these are questions that people don't want to ask out loud, especially if people are around. These are questions about one's health history, right? They want to type, have that response come back to them privately. And it's a lot more information than makes sense for Alexa to speak to you. So that works great for a chatbot, doesn't work so great for Alexa. So really think, okay, I have this use case that I've used on other channels. Does it make sense for Alexa, first and foremost? And if it does, how do I need to radically adjust this UX so it honors Alexa for what she is designed to do? Furthermore, for voice, this is true as well. I talked in the binary, chatbots versus Alexa, and it's not chatbots versus voice. Within voice, we have different types of channels as well, right? Siri, there's a reason Siri's shortcuts is designed the way that it is, because it's meant to be extremely concise for repeated actions. Alexa gives you a little bit more breathing room. So we talk to our mobile devices, whether that's Siri or IVR, different than our home devices, different than our car. So keep in mind, even if it's a voice-first channel, what makes sense for that particular channel? And again, our last point, use cases can be repeated, but user experiences cannot. So really understand what it is that you're designing for. And then lastly, cognitive overload is real. So it's a buzzword that you see at every sort of UX conference, especially in voice conferences lately. But this is true advice. Users can only handle my voice, Alexa's voice, anybody talking to you. Do you remember when you were at school and your teacher just would go on and on and on and on and you would eventually tune out? The same is true of Alexa, right? So if Alexa doesn't have a clear, concise point to the response that you have designed her to give, you risk losing your audience. And it's not because they're not invested in this experience or invested in the experience of your skill that you've built, there's just so much that the brain can handle. So I'm often asked, how much is too much then? If your script that you have designed Alexa to give is too much for you personally to memorize, it's probably too long, right? Because it'll be difficult for that user to interact with the skill. So I'll stop there. If you have any questions about conversation design, UX, or what the American Red Cross is doing, absolutely come find me during lunch, during our tea breaks. I'm really excited to hear from our fellow speakers as well. Really excited to be here in Bangalore and excited to be talking about the work that the American Red Cross is doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for a lot of the insights that you gave about design and how the American Red Cross is making true difference and bringing transformation to people's lives. We really appreciate that. Can we have a loud round of applause for Michelle and the Red Cross, please? I'd like to invite up on stage Prachi Mukhija, who's the head of marketing Alexa at Amazon, to give away a small token of our appreciation to Michelle.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, they need a photo. Pause, pause. Oh. Yeah.